Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by bigfouraccountingfirms.com. If you enjoy our show, don't forget to help us out by subscribing to this podcast, sharing it with a friend, and providing us with a review on iTunes. Check out the show notes below for the link. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
So if you're listening to this podcast, that means we've just finished summarizing the salaries at each of the Big Four accounting firms, PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, and E&Y. And now that we're through analyzing the individual accounting firm salaries, we're going to go through a high-level summary of what we've learned from analyzing each firm. For example, what's the best city to work in, and which Big Four accounting firm pays the most. If you didn't get a chance to listen to those prior podcasts, make sure to check out the show notes, as there will be links to those prior podcasts where we covered the salaries at each of the Big Four accounting firms. What were the major takeaways from our analysis? I think one of the biggest takeaways is how highly valued consulting is over tax and audit at the Big Four firms. In many cases, advisory people make more than 50% more than their peers in audit and tax. And that's just astonishing to me. We also learned that tax is the second highest paid practice in the Big Four, as they are viewed as specialists and are paid accordingly. And lastly, amazingly enough, the bread and butter of the Big Four firms, audit, is the most poorly paid. This is where everyone thinks that the Big Four make their money, because the Big Four are known for auditing financial statements. But it seems that even the Big Four themselves do not value auditing, and they do not value their audit personnel. They pay their audit employees the lowest salary out of all their employees. Now, why do I think this is happening? If the Big Four are perceived as auditors, why are they paying their auditors the least? I believe this is occurring because of automation and technology. We've talked about technology's impact on accounting in past podcast episodes, and I think automation has devastated the auditing industry. Auditing used to be hard to understand, and no one wanted to do it, so they wanted to pay their auditors the most just to get it out of the way. Auditors had to go into a company and request thousands of hard copy documents and sample all of those documents, or they had to test inventory by hand. But now technology has made accounting more unified and automated. Journal entries are made automatically, and they are verified electronically. You no longer have to request paper audit documentation or tie out binders of documents by hand. You can audit a client's work papers remotely. You don't even have to go to the client site anymore. And because of all of this, auditing is much easier and takes less time and skill. And what this means is that clients don't have to pay their auditors more. They can pay them less now. And so what the audit firms, which are the Big Four accounting firms, are doing is they're not paying their people as much. You don't have to pay a premium for people in an industry that's perceived as dying out. But an industry that isn't dying out is technology. There is a lot of new technology out there, and that is where the money is going to. Big companies are implementing new technological solutions, and they need help implementing them. And that's where the Big Four come in on the other side. The Big Four are raking in tons of money in their consulting practices. And I think a lot of that money is helping implementing technological solutions for their clients, like automation, robotics, and blockchain solutions. I also think that the Big Four are making a lot of money in consulting their clients about the risks that come from those technological solutions, like cyber attacks and preventing loss of data from technological errors. And with that insight, let's go over some more conclusions that many of you are interested in, like where is the best place to work in the United States for the Big Four and which firm pays the most. If you want to make the most money in the Big Four, as far as location goes, your safest bet is going to be to locate in New York. And this way you don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about which practice, because every practice of the Big Four is very well paid in New York. And that is without a doubt the highest paying city in the United States. And that one's simple. You don't have to think about that or analyze that any further. The only thing you'd have to look at is cost of living. But New York is far and away the highest paying city in the United States. And this is probably just because of headquarters of a lot of companies are located within New York. And with that, which firm pays the most? Well, as far as which firm pays the most, It's a little bit more complicated. You have to look into which practice you want to go into. If you're interested in going into consulting, which would probably be very smart as they're the best paying practice, then Deloitte pays the best for consultants. However, if you want to make the most money in auditing or tax, PwC is likely your best bet, as they pay their auditing and tax people fairly well, at least compared to the other big four. They probably don't pay them as well as consultants, though. It seems like consultants make the most money at the big four across the board. And it's funny that after all this analysis, we've come to that Deloitte pays the best for consulting and PwC pays the best for auditing and tax. Because of all the rankings that we've done and all the analysis of revenue, what is Deloitte number one at? Well, Deloitte is number one at all revenue, right? But Deloitte is number one by far in consulting. They have the largest consulting practice out of Big Four. They're more than double than the closest firm. And if you look at PwC, what is PwC the best at? They're best at tax and audit. They're the highest earning audit practice with over $16 billion in revenue in audit. And they're the highest paid tax practice with almost $10 billion in revenue from their tax practice. So it's no shock the information that we gained by looking at these salaries, but it's good that we went through it for you and we showed it to you. So now you have a little bit more insight into which firm pays the most. And it's also, and this data is useful whether you work at the Big Four or whether you want to work for the Big Four, because it's always good to analyze salaries and figure out which is the best paying and which values which practice. Like, you don't want to go to a firm that doesn't value audit and you go there and you're frustrated with your paycheck. If you've done the research ahead of time, then you know what to expect and you aren't disappointed. With that, I'd like to thank you for listening to our series on the salaries of the Big Four. Now, we'll have future episodes about Big Four compensation, so make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Thanks again.
We appreciate your help in growing this podcast so we can continue to bring you the best Big Four content possible. You could help us out by providing a review on iTunes, sending us an email with your comments, and don't forget to share with your friends. There's a link below in the show notes. That's our show for today. Thanks for listening and have a great day.